Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
from sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Recover You. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Kylene.
Today, we are going to discuss the concept of taking the pressure off and giving you permission that separation and divorce is really okay. Yeah. So I know that, a lot of our podcasts focus on reconciliation, about trauma recovery, about getting into sobriety and all of these things and how couples can make it work. And, you hear us talk a lot about how much effort it takes. And every once in a while, we like to pop in an episode here and there where we just sort of reiterate that reconciliation is not the right decision for everyone. And it really, really, really is okay to get divorced. It really is okay to say, this is not for me. I cannot do this. It really is okay in a lot of different scenarios. You do not have to be two horrible people that have, a terrible, horrible relationship. And we're going to kind of go through just some things to think about. This episode is definitely not us telling you what to do at all. We just kind of want to bring up some ideas. We want to offer some perspectives where maybe you can start to think about things. Maybe we can help you take the pressure off. Maybe you just need someone externally who has done the work to reconcile, but also has been divorced to tell you it's going to be okay no matter what you decide. Like, it's really, if you choose to leave the relationship, you will be okay.
Yeah.
And so we just want to offer you that permission today.
Yeah, betrayal is a big rupture in the relationship. And there's a lot of reasons why. And you can look at the addict and you can and should feel for the addict and maybe some of the traumas that they have gone through that has led to the addiction. But at the end of the day, it's still a major rupture in the relationship. And restoring the relationship is not a step in the process to you restoring yourself. Like, those are two mutually exclusive things. It's always beautiful when a relationship is restored, but it's also beautiful when you embark on a singular process of healing. And so one doesn't have to depend on obviously, relationship repair comes when two people actually really heal. But my point is, the relationship, it may not survive, but you can live. And that actually goes for the addict too. You can live in a healed state after that sometimes the relationships are just so ruptured beyond repair. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I think you said two horrible people or whatever you said, but it's like sometimes two wonderful people.
Yeah,
sometimes end up not being very compatible. And
yeah, we're going to talk about some of we're going to bring up just some concepts here. But the whole point is, I think what happens often, because people internally and externally feel so much pressure to make something work, that we want to take some of that pressure off of you, because I think it is a cultural and systemic concept that is deeply, deeply ingrained, maybe more so in faith communities, mm-hmm. that divorce is something that is so far beyond the realm of acceptable that what you see is people allowing themselves to live long-term in situations that are very mentally, emotionally unhealthy for them. And from a spiritual perspective, and most of this episode won't be too spiritually focused, but from a spiritual perspective, my thought is that, you are here to, there is a purpose for you. And there's something that you are, there's some things that we are meant to accomplish in life. Mm-hmm. And we don't always accomplish all of those things, but we're here to do something, whatever that is. And it can be different for every single person. It doesn't have to be this big, huge, changing the world thing at all. I mean, it can be small. Mm-hmm. But the relationships that we are in, if we are not able to achieve a sense of safety and calm and relaxation in our nervous system, if we aren't able to be healthy in the relationships that we have, that can dramatically hinder our ability to step into and to accomplish the things that we were put put on earth to do. And so I think sometimes in the faith community, we get very, very stuck on this concept about marriage that just is not true. It's not accurate. And we put so much value in, I don't know how to word that exactly.
Ethereal.
Thank you so much. I was like, how many people laughed at me last week for mispronouncing it twice in a row? Anyway, so we're not here to tell you what to do. We just want to kind of bring up some things that you can think about. And again, take the pressure off from two people who have both put the effort in and seen the result from it. And in other situations, we've both been divorced, and neither of us has, I think I'm going to speak for you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we have zero regrets about making those decisions. Right. And I think that is too a fear of somebody. It's like, what if I get divorced and then I just live in this constant regret? And it's like, most likely, if you're at the point where you're seriously considering it, you won't regret it. And I actually heard, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I would tend to believe it based on my own experiences. I heard something once that said one of the primary regrets that divorced people have is just that they didn't do it sooner.
Yeah.
So if you're somebody that's like really struggling with it, often what we see is people that really are tormented about the concept have some stories in their head, have some beliefs around what divorce is or what marriage is that sometimes are not healthy, that are not maybe fully true. And we'll kind of talk about stories in a little bit. And so anyway, we want to open up a Pandora's box here, I guess, and just sort of give you permission and say, you can totally live a happy, healthy life after being divorced. Right. You can get remarried, you can be single, you can live into your purpose, whatever it is. If you're really struggling with, can I live a healthy life separating after this? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
So we also want to start with just this idea that I'll say one more thing in relation to spirituality here and faith-based backgrounds. From a spiritual perspective, you do not have any obligation to stay after discovering sex or porn addiction in some capacity, or infidelity or an affair. Sometimes what we'll hear is individuals are worried about breaking their covenant by just saying, okay, I'm done, I'm getting divorced. And what we need to kind of zoom out from a little bit is it's already been broken. And that's kind of a painful thing to hear sometimes, but that is what has happened when somebody has cheated on you. That covenant they were involved in that agreement. They broke that. So that part of it is already done. Now, so that takes the pressure off of you. You're not breaking it. It is broken. Now, the two of you can decide to repair that, to reinstate it, to whatever. But sometimes that, from a faith-based background, can feel like a lot of pressure to somebody. Like, I'm breaking something, but you didn't break it. Right. I want to take that pressure off. So it wasn't by you, and at this point, you are free to decide what's best for you moving forward. And the other thing I hear a lot is, again, particularly in faith-based communities, feeling a lot of pressure to feel like I did every single thing possible to restore this. That there's so much. These betrayed partners will say they just put so much pressure on themselves. So like, if I get divorced, if I make that decision, I have to be able to look back and go, there's not a conversation that I couldn't have had. There's not a book that I could have given him. There's nothing that I could have done. I couldn't have been nicer. I couldn't have X, Y, Z. And to that, there's a couple things that I would say if you're kind of struggling with that. And Patrick, I sort of want to, before I jump into that, I actually want to pause and hear your perspective as somebody who did the breaking, who did the hurting. If I was going, well, I have to put all this energy in to save you and to save us, and that's my job after you were the one that did the breaking. What is your response to that?
Well, I think, and I think we have talked about this. The addict, or the person who's doing the behavior, is denial is a massive part of what they're doing. So early on, the betrayed partner is going to carry some of that water, for lack of a better term, right? To kind of help get that person pointed towards recovery. But very quickly, I mean, the addict is not a 1-month-old baby that can't do anything, right? There's perspective that maybe the addict doesn't have yet, right? Until they've moved into a little bit of healing. But the addict certainly can hand over the phone. The addict certainly can cut off communication with the affair partner. The addict can, those are grown-up big boy things to do, right? That you can do whether you're healed or not, right? Those are responsible things to do. But I don't think, from and I hope I'm answering your question.
Well, let's say like you, and not even, let's say I've handed you all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're loosely in sobriety.
Okay.
But it's not a healthy situation. And I'm just like, I'm just racking my brain. What do I need to do to motivate you? What do I need to do to make this work? What do I need to do to make you love me? What do I need to do?
Yeah.
Because you're not really like cheating on me anymore, but does that mean I'm free? Like, you know what I mean? Like if I'm just sitting here going, the relationship is not where I want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Your recovery is not where I want it to be. And I'm taking all the responsibility for us moving forward.
What's the question in there?
Your response to that type of thinking.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I think the addict has their own responsibility to drive healing and to provide safety in the relationship. Now, the notion of safety does change over time. So, like early on, safety is getting rid of laptops, getting rid of phones, or whatever that may be to provide that safety. And also being open to hearing feedback from the betrayed spouse. I think that was the point I was making. Is sometimes you may not think there's a portal, but to the betrayed spouse, they're still concerned about something. So, oh, geez, I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and do that. So the addict has to be very proactive in their own healing process, and they can't just go, well, you tell me what to do. Why don't you tell me what to do, and then I'll go do it.
So my point is when they aren't doing any of those things,
right?
Because you keep coming from this.
I'm sorry.
You keep coming from this perspective of being healthy. When someone is not
we're heading towards rupture.
I know my point. You're too much in the mindset of being healthy. I'm saying when people are not healthy and the wife is taking the responsibility, the whole point is it's not your job.
Oh, it's not. No. Yeah. Well, and there's no amount of love. There's no amount of leaving notes or putting books in front of people that it's ever going to drive the unwilling addict to heal.
There you go. Yeah, Never. Exactly. So you got there.
Man.
Well, normally in our episodes, you're coming from the perspective of encouraging the people that really want to try. So I threw a different angle at you. We're talking about people who aren't really willing to do the work here. Okay, but in this first point, we're talking about faith-based people who really struggle, faith-based betrayed partners, which is mostly where this episode is focused on the betrayed partner. And they're feeling really stuck. And they're like, I have to check every single box. And if I don't, if I could have done one more thing, maybe he would work harder. Here are some thoughts for that. One, write down what you've already done. Because I almost guarantee you that list is going to be way longer than you think it is when you're struggling in the moment.
Yeah.
When you go back and you go from day one of your relationship or from discovery or whatever, and you write down, well, I've given him these podcasts, I've connected him to these resources, I've asked him to get to these groups, I've given him this book, I've showed him what I need to feel safe, I've begged him, and I've forgiven, and I've done this, and I've, and you've written down all of these things, you're going to see that it's a long list. Mm-hmm. So people that really struggle with this, they've already done so much. So the follow-up question there is, why, would you, if this was like your best friend, would you tell that person that they need to try one more thing? So take a look at that and think, if my best friend was in this exact situation, they've done everything on this list, would I push them to do one more thing on that list?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then also just to remember that your behaviors and effort cannot make the other person change, and you cannot love someone to healing.
Right. Yeah.
So we always want to take it based on to what you were talking about originally. The addict has their responsibility, and their responsibility is not only to get into recovery, but it is to come and meet you and see you and help you heal as well.
Right.
And then we have our responsibility as the betrayed partner to engage in our own healing.
Right.
But the safety is mutual there.
Yeah. And like I had to learn through feedback how to approach you and how to provide safety. I was very interested in that, right? I was if I said something wrong, I didn't want to say it again. If I didn't give you a compliment, I wanted to make sure that I was a little bit more aware, right? If there was, or whatever that was that you were looking for. And so my motivation was a 10 out of 10 on trying to get this right. And so I think and my thought is you probably noticed that. So for those of you who are betrayed, is the motivation a 10 out of 10? You know what I mean? Is it a 10 out of 10? And so those are the types of things that you look for. Not words. We're not talking words. Are you just sorry because you got caught, or are you sorry because you really hurt somebody and you want to change? Mm-hmm. So 10 out of 10 motivation is a very noticeable thing.
Right. So moving into some other things to think about if you are considering divorce. One, and these are just thoughts of like, yes, it is okay. And these are just examples of things that you're going to see in those situations. If you've given your addict partner all the resources and they don't engage, like you've said, hey, because that happens a lot of times when a partner will reach out to me. What we're doing originally is establishing the baseline of like where to get started. And I'm saying, hey, like your husband should get connected to a CSAT. Let's find him a group, a healthy group to get connected with, some just basic stuff. There's this book that based on your particular things that I'm hearing in this call, like this would be great for your husband to start with like this particular book. Okay. So you hand him those 3 things. It's been 3 weeks. Has anything happened?
Right.
It's been 6 months. Has anything happened?
Yeah.
So if you have a partner that has the tools and resources, and that's important because we've shared Patrick's story. We've talked about addiction. We've talked about the brain. We know that outside of it being in the open and outside of them having the tools and resources, it's going to be difficult. But once it's out in the open and once they have the tools and resources, there are no excuses. Right. And I'm going to repeat that. There are no excuses. Mm-mm. So if you are somebody that is struggling with, okay, well, but is this on me? Do I need to try something else? No. If you have given them tools and resources and they don't jump on them, that is not your problem.
Right,
that is not your fault. It has nothing to do with you or your value or your worth or anything like that. And so that's certainly a path that could absolutely lead to separation and is not going to bring health. If you are handing your partner, you could call them boundaries. You could say a list of things that you need to feel safe, expectations for your relationship, your health, whatever it is. You're basically communicating these things that, hey, this horrible thing has happened. I'm open to reconciliation. I'm open to making this work. But if we're going to make it work, these are the types of things that need to be established in our relationship moving forward. And they don't respect them. Mm-hmm. I mean, what does that say? If I hand you a list and I go, this is what I need to feel safe, and then you just gloss over it.
Yeah. It's people tell you who they are and what they're motivated by how they behave. And so if you hand somebody a list that says this is what I need to feel safe, and they're like, I don't really know about that. Mm-hmm.
And I'm very much for if the door to reconciliation is open and a betrayed partner needs to be as clear as possible. Make sure that everything is out on the table. Yeah. Be black and white about it. Have the outcome that you want communicated, have the boundaries and the safety requirements listed, and have the consequence if they are not listed. So that I think that it's very important that we communicate if something hurts our feelings, that we communicate if there's a particular thing that triggers us, that we communicate what the boundaries are and what the things are that will help us feel safe. So that is our responsibility. If we are living in the same home, if we are navigating life with this person that has hurt us, we have to communicate those things honestly and openly. But once we've done that, they must respond to that. And however they respond is information. And if they respond in a negative way, we don't want to internalize that as, well, maybe I didn't communicate them properly. We want to take the information based on how they're behaving.
Right. Yeah.
We've talked about how this can be a difficult process and how it can be a slow process. But one of the things when we're talking about divorce is, if you don't see a positive trajectory consistently, because that's going to consistently motivate you to continue giving it that time and effort. So the opposite, like if you see that you look back in the past 3 to 6 months or the past year or whatever, it's been a solid, consistent trajectory of things getting better, with sobriety, with recovery, relationally, with your boundaries being respected. Like all of these areas are just solid trajectory of improvement over time, then there's probably, potential to, that's going to give you the motivation. You're gathering positive feedback, and the more positive feedback you have, the more it bolsters your ability going through this to go, okay, I can do this for another month. I can do this for another 6 months, because it keeps getting better as long as it keeps getting better. So when someone doesn't have that experience and you're, let's say, like a year in and you're looking back and you're like, this hasn't gotten better. Again, we want to take the pressure off. Like how much, you don't have to suffer. Suffering for suffering's sake doesn't make things better.
Right.
So again, we always want to be clear. We want to set the trajectory. We want to offer the healing resources. We want to support people. We want to, we want all these things. They have to do it. They have to do it. And you are just as valuable as every other person in the world, on the planet. And so your values matter, your boundaries matter, your emotional needs matter. And so just because you're a kind, loving, empathetic person who wants to support your addict partner does not mean that you need to overstep your own emotional safety.
Right.
And be wounded continually through this process.
Yeah.
Because that ultimately, not only does it not help you, it actually does not help the addicted partner either.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about divorce, one of the things that we might see that, again, taking the pressure off is when you don't see that trajectory. So just take a minute, think about like the past 6 months, the past year. Are you getting that information?
If I could add there, that what's really important in this stage when you're evaluating this is not every addict heals the same way. And so that's really important. Now, I don't want to be, the reason I say that is it is nice to look at an example and go, hey, I need you to engage in the activities that this person has engaged in. But we also have to remember that every addict has their own different stories of hurt and pain, and sometimes it can be hard to get to that point. So there may be some, like, it's like starting a car that's been in the cold for a year or whatever. It's going to sound a little crappy till it gets going, versus maybe some other folks that get going. So I like what you're saying about like the trajectory's got to show there, because if you see that trajectory, maybe some folks, you forgot to journal or what, we talked journaling last time, but
oh my gosh, Patrick,
but
let go of the journaling.
I know, but my point is I think it's like a both and. I think you can look at an example of somebody or a couple that's healthy in recovery and work very hard to replicate that and demand that, right? And say, hey, I want our behaviors to be those behaviors.
Well, pause for a second. I don't want people comparing necessarily to other people. I want them to create in their mind what is healthy and move towards that.
Right. And, yeah.
So maybe there's an example of that, but to your point, maybe not comparing exactly, because everybody's a little different. But what we want to move towards is health, not trying to be somebody else.
That's right. Yeah. So that's where, because some folks are like, if somebody is introverted and they're an addict, you don't want to make them an extrovert. Like that may not happen.
Right.
Right. So, but, but certainly certain healing activities are consistent, like journaling.
Oh my gosh, let it go. Let it go.
No, but like getting into a group and getting into, maybe therapy and things. Those are consistent
and let's even zoom out further than that. When I'm talking about a betrayed partner who is like on the brink of divorce, but she's just agonizing over it, she's usually tolerating a lot of garbage.
That's right.
It's not just he's not going to group. Like he's gaslighting, or he's not taking responsibility, or he's in sobriety, but then absolutely no other healing is happening. And it's just stagnant, and it's been that way forever, and they can't seem to communicate. And she's feeling frustrated and hurt because she has dealt with the pain of the betrayal, and then she has dealt with waiting for sobriety, and now she's not getting any benefit to that because the relationship isn't healing, and she's feeling frustrated, and then she's putting the pressure on herself. And that's like a quote unquote good scenario. There's so many other scenarios where the addict partner is gaslighting or blaming or being mean to the betrayed partner and blaming them even. And so I mean there's such a spectrum here, and normally when we're assuming that most people listening to these episodes are two people that want to heal, but I'm sure that we have people listening that are stuck in really difficult, painful relationships where one person is not engaged, and that's kind of what we're trying to talk to today. Is you cannot shoulder the burden as one person that is meant to be carried by two.
Yeah,
you cannot do it.
Right,
and so the addict is responsible to heal and to get sober and to get in recovery. And if they are in a relationship, they are responsible to make that safe for you.
Yeah, I was thinking about, right as you said that, I was like, if you compare and contrast this to, God forbid, say your spouse has cancer and they're bedridden, it's a different situation. This isn't the same thing. Your spouse physically can't help you. Your spouse, so you go, all right, I'm out of here. This is we say it's trauma that informs the addiction and not a sickness. And yes, I guess much like a cancer patient, if there's medication or chemo or some sort of protocol that person's supposed to go through, you want them to go through that, right? And so there's you and I have been
through that. I went through the treatment, but here's the deal: I wasn't mean to you through that process,
right? Yeah.
So if you want to take that analogy, you're caring for me, and maybe I needed the help during that time, and I accepted that help, but I was thankful. I was not abusing you. I was not being mean to you, right. and then I worked on my own healing and took responsibility for my own stuff moving forward.
Right.
So if you want to use that analogy, I think it is the same. And we don't want to get too stuck in the idea that someone is not capable as an adult to be a kind human.
Right.
They have the capability to do that. And, sometimes it's like, think about how they are when they're in front of other people. Are they polite? Can they control their moods? Can they, do they have outbursts in public? Because if the answer is no, but they're doing all of that with you, then you have an indication that they have the ability to control their words,
right.
But they're choosing not to, right? So thinking through some of those things, like you don't have to be this person that takes the pain of someone else and just absorbs it because it's not your responsibility.
Yeah, no one deserves to be the punching bag for anybody, short-term or long-term, throughout their lives. So there's no role that's designed for.
No.
Yeah.
So we said that, it can be slow, it can be hard, but we want to see that positive trajectory. So other examples, one sort of got mixed into as we were just having that conversation. Divorce is probably somewhere down the road if you are constantly being gaslit, blamed, and manipulated. Because again, all of those things, like why is that so damaging? Because it rips out safety. If you've listened to this episode, this podcast, what are we in, like our third year, maybe second year? And how many years have we been doing it now? I don't even know. Anyway, the 100-some episodes that we've done, you've probably heard the word safety like 1,000 times.
Right.
And the reason that's so important is because we can't really accomplish full healing, and going back to the beginning of this episode, really move into the purpose of our life and engaging with other humans in healthy ways, when our brain and our body do not feel safe in our body, in our environment, and in our life. And so gaslighting and blaming and manipulation from your intimate partner, the person you are supposed to feel the safest with, and who creates the environment that you sleep in, and where your sleep is supposed to help you recover and process the day. When you don't feel safe with the person you are supposed to feel the most safe with, it destroys your ability to live a healthy life. And so when you're living with someone who's gaslighting, blaming, and manipulating constantly, they're constantly lying, they're constantly deflecting, responsibility, they're constantly blaming you, they're constantly telling you that you're not good enough. That's not healthy. It's not, and you taking it is not healthy for yourself, and it's not healthy for the other person either. But I don't mean that in a flippant way, because one of the things that happens with gaslighting and manipulation a lot is that the women, anyone, male or female, who this is happening to, gets very confused in the conversation. So I don't mean taking it as like, well, you shouldn't just take it, it's easy. Now, I understand that it gets very confusing, and that's one of the most common things is when someone begins to understand that this is happening to them, manipulation is like really tricky, because it gets in your brain, and you leave the conversation feeling confused. And then you look back at it and you're thinking, wait a second, the conversation started with me bringing up a problem, and then somehow through this, that was diminished. And then by the end of it, I was the problem, and I was like apologizing for something. How did he even get there? And then my thing that I brought up, I was told that I was stupid for thinking that, right? Like, so it gets really turned around in the conversation. And that's actually, an example of DARVO, DARVO, is deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. So when you bring up, and this is important because I think if this is happening in anyone's relationships, the first thing to understand is that it's happening. And that's the first step to being able to step out of those conversations, is to be aware that it's happening. And so DARVO is just an example of, it's something that can help us recognize that pattern, is when you bring something up or a conversation starts, the person that you're talking to denies it, then they attack you. So like, I didn't do that, and maybe you're dumb for thinking that. Why would you think that, right? So I'm attacking your intelligence, I'm attacking your intuition, and then they're going to reverse victim and offender. So you brought this to me, but I didn't do anything. You're wrong for thinking this, and I'm going to switch the conversation somehow so that you're the problem. And that's the idea of DARVO, and that's really common in these manipulative conversations. And it gets really confusing because it catches you off guard. Because as someone who would never do that, someone who is empathetic, someone who does take responsibility, it's just, your brain thinks differently, right? And not everybody that engages in manipulative behavior, it may be consciously aware of it, but it still does not excuse it. If you find that, so this is another example of, like, again, taking the pressure off. If you're feeling this way, we want to let you know that it's okay, that, you don't have to stay in this relationship. If you find that you like your partner again as they get into sobriety, but you just can't trust them deeply enough to have a connected relationship, that's okay. And I think that might be one of the hardest ones to come to, because I can see how people would feel a lot of guilt, like, hey, we're like really good friends, and I really respect that you're in recovery, and I'm really proud of you, but like, I just can't be married to you anymore. And I can see how that would just be very difficult. But that is a reality sometimes. And there are certain situations where you can do a lot of healing separately and as a couple, and just not be able to have, again, marriage is supposed to be the most safe, the most vulnerable, the most intimate connection you can have. And when there's a level of pain that's been created, sometimes that's not possible to create again. And if that's you, and if you're kind of sitting in that space, there's nothing wrong with you. If you are a Christian who believes that you need to forgive, but you're sitting here going, I really respect my partner for getting into recovery, but I don't know if I can like be married to them again, there's nothing wrong with you. And it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. And it doesn't mean that you didn't try hard enough. And it doesn't mean that you didn't heal hard enough. just sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
And that it's okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's actually a very mature way. And I think actually in that situation, I would imagine, because both parties are very healed at that point, that it becomes a very honest and open conversation, with each other, as opposed to something born out of a lot of anger or whatever. And so to your point, it would be hard, but part of me feels like the easiness to it might be that as you heal, you become more authentic and you become more aware of your own personal feelings, both sides, and that it actually might have an ease to it that would surprise you as you went through it, because then it would be, let's say there were kids involved, you could trust that partner now to say, hey, I'm really proud of the work they've done and everything. I know we can work through this together as it relates to our children or whatever.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, oddly enough, I think as painful and hard as that might be, it might be easier than maybe some of the others, because there's so much emotion in some of those others, like the gaslighting. If you're being manipulated, it's very confusing. Mm-hmm. If you're not, you have this freedom to think, and you have this freedom to kind of express yourself, and this freedom to kind of move in that space. And if it's reciprocated on in a healthy way, that's how you raise healthy kids after divorce, right? Those are the, which is a really
if you want,
possible thing.
Being healthy after divorce is totally possible. And so again, that's just another example of when it's okay, is if you're finding it impossible to be healthy while you're married.
Right.
That's like, if you had to summarize everything we're talking about in this episode, is if down to one sentence, it's okay to get divorced if you've tried everything and you just can't be healthy mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever, in the marriage. Then it's possible to get divorced, so that it's good to get divorced even, so that you can pursue that on your own. You can find health by yourself. There may be in some situations where you get in relationships after, and that brings deep healing from a relational perspective, where you can find that safety with another person again, or just by yourself. You can create that, and that is okay. And so I think that's a really good summary, actually, is whatever is happening, if it is long-term hindering your ability to create health mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually.
Yeah.
Another example would be if your partner is sober, and we sort of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but if your partner is sober but just isn't willing to do the work to help you feel safe and assist you in your healing. So sometimes you hear comments like, well, I've been sober for 3 months. Why are you getting triggered? Stuff like that. So sometimes you'll see individuals will jump into the sobriety work. Maybe they're partially motivated. Maybe they're motivated just enough to save the relationship in their mind that they're like, okay, I better get sober. But then they're not working on some of the deeper emotional stuff where they have empathy for the pain that is caused, or they want this like pat on the back for doing the right thing without the recognition of, why is she going to pat me on the back for doing the right thing after I just destroyed her reality, right? And so that's another situation where, like, if that was a long-term pattern where it's like, well, you just need to praise me, and I'm like, I did the bare minimum, and you need to make me feel good about this thing, even though I've destroyed you and I'm not helping you heal at all. That's not going to create health in the relationship at all. And then the last one that I'll just say, I want to start it by saying, we realize that there are so many relationships and so much nuance within this that there's no way that we can ever put everything into one episode. And so the last one I want to mention is any form of abuse. And so even within the context of this episode, we weren't really talking about that. Because we do realize that is a very separate, when you have a partner that is refusing to give you access to your financials, to any money, when you have a partner that you are afraid will hit you, if you have a partner that is verbally abusing, if you have a partner that is very controlling and you feel like you don't have autonomy over your life and over your choices because you can get hurt, those are different situations than the ones that we are talking about. Where you do have autonomy and freedom to make all of these choices and to leave freely. And so I do want to put that caveat in here in case anyone is listening that for those particular situations, we always recommend that you work with people that are very specialized in that area. So therapists that work with abuse victims, victim advocacy centers that help create plans, those sorts of things, because that is very, very different. What we're sort of talking about mostly in this episode is just the general spectrum of humanity where people are selfish. And sometimes they just don't want to do the work, but they're not typically going to cross the line into stopping someone from leaving the house or stopping someone from using the money or, things of that nature that are more extreme. Yeah.
I feel like people tell you who they are by how they behave. And they, as a subset of that, they tell you how they feel about you by how they behave. And so, we've seen couples restore even after there was illegal activity. They've been able to move to that. We've seen other couples, split up fairly quickly. 30 days after discovery. So it's there's a lot of the point being is each partner, betrayed partner that we're talking about has their limit. And I think to your point, be clear about what that is. And it is okay, a week after discovery to be like, not my gig.
Yeah.
I'm out. And
just so if you have some, let's say, because again, we've heard stories from the whole spectrum. Right. So let's say you're coming in, just as an example, with this extreme story. And then you're listening to our podcast and you're seeing these couples that have reconciled and you're thinking, that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot for, you don't have to do what we've done.
Yeah.
You absolutely do not have to do what we've done. Mm-hmm. And I think, my relationship, my first marriage is kind of an example of we didn't have a good relationship. So I was not willing to put in the work when everything came out. I was very much, okay, bye. This is done. With you, we had a good relationship in so many ways. And I did want to see if it could work. And then then I saw that trajectory. And so I think so much of when things come out, what impacts a betrayed partner's decision is going to be the type of relationship they had with their partner before they found out.
Yeah.
And their intuition in understanding if this is somebody that they think can do it. Mm-hmm. Or, everybody can do it, but I guess I would say would be willing to do it.
Right.
And your partner more than anybody else. So trust yourself. Mm-hmm. Trust yourself. And you do not, if you're in a really sticky situation and you're feeling conflicted, you do not have to try harder just because you've heard positive stories. That's not everybody's story, and that's okay. That is okay. You don't have to be this perfect person, and you don't have to continue suffering. It really, 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 really is okay. And both of us have had experiences where we went through divorces, and it was okay.
Yeah, turned out okay.
So again, Patrick has said this a couple of times, but we want you to believe their actions, not their words. A recovering addict will show you who they are, their desire for health, and the ability to respect your boundaries clearly within the first year of receiving the tools and recovery resources. And I just sort of put a timeline on that because once we give you the tools, let's say that things are fairly healthy. Maybe they're not perfect day one, but they're not extreme. Everything's sort of moving. One of the general, and again, you don't even have to follow this if you don't want to, but if reconciliation is on the table, one of the timelines that people throw out there is let's give it a year and see what happens. Mm-hmm. So if you've given your addict partner, the guideline of seeing a CSAT, of connecting with a group, of listening to some podcasts, of reading some books, and then you're past a year, I want you to look back at that year and go, did they take it seriously?
What have they done?
Where are we at?
Yeah.
So here are some questions. If you've listened to this episode and you are feeling stuck in your relationship, here are some self-reflection questions that I want you to ask that may help you continue thinking about this. Number 1, is my partner actively engaged in healing work and doing it voluntarily? Number 2, am I connected to a practitioner who can help me make sense of my experience, help me heal, and support me through this decision? Number 3, if more than 1 year has passed since discovery, what has the past year told me? Where do I fall on the list of my partner's priorities? And has he been successful in sobriety? Has that trajectory been good? And then number 4, do I feel loved, valued, and respected in this relationship? I almost feel like that could be the only question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do I feel loved, valued, and respected in this relationship? We want to remind you that you are not broken if you can't make this work. Reconciliation takes 2 people who are more focused on it than anything else in their lives. We know that there are as many nuances to your situation as there are people. We know that children, money, trauma history, and history with your partner all play a toll on the decisions you will make. We are not here to tell you what to do. We just want to give you permission to live a life that allows you to be healthy and happy after betrayal. So many of the things that keep us stuck are stories we tell ourselves as opposed to reality. And that was just one thing that we mentioned really early in the beginning, and I just want to kind of wrap up with that concept. And that is we all have filters that we gather information in life from. And those are based on our experiences. Those are based on the things that have happened to us in life. And we create a story about what is happening. So an example, I think we talked about this recently in an episode, but maybe it was just a conversation I had. But like I have a wound of rejection.
Mm-hmm.
So if I am aware that I have a wound of rejection, I can be more aware of the filter that sets for me. So an example of that is that I'm talking with a friend and something that the friend says triggers that wound of rejection. I'm able to now question that and go, hey, was that actually their intention? Is my interpretation of that real and completely accurate? Or is it possible that this is getting filtered through my wound? Because a wound is going to pull proof. It's always going to pull proof that the wound is real. So because of that, sometimes the stories that we create are not true. And some of the things that are very, very strong in helping us create stories and set filters are things that we gather from society, things that we are taught through family systems or experience through our family systems growing up. So if our family had strong opinions on marriage or on divorce or on infidelity, or if they had loose opinions on marriage or divorce or infidelity, if we were raised with a faith background is something that'll really set our filters pretty strongly in terms of the effort that we need to make, the pain that we need to endure, what are we allowed to do or not do, So all of these things can create these filters. And so we need to become aware of the stories that we're telling ourselves so that we can question them and go, is that actually true? Mm-hmm. Is that reality? Because what we want, the only filter ultimately that we want to be making decisions through is truth.
Right.
But pain allows us to filter through a lot of other things that create negative stories and negative beliefs in our life. So we want to be able to bring those up to the surface, become aware of them so that we can question them, and that's sometimes when community comes in, that's sometimes when friends come in, that's sometimes when your therapist or your coach or your practitioner comes in to kind of help you navigate that and go, maybe is there another interpretation to this belief that you just shared with me? Is there a different perspective here that we can look at? Because one of the things that stories will do is they will build a really strong wall that will keep us trapped in situations that we do not need to be trapped in. Right. When people outside of the situation will go, there is a whole world beyond that wall. Mm-hmm. But because we really believe in a story, we will hit up against that wall and go, this is the only option. Yeah. And so that's where community, friendship, and people outside of our situation can help us see our situation and our options more clearly because they don't have that same story and that same filter.
Right.
Anything else to think about that you want to share in terms of, taking the pressure off when making this decision?
Yeah, I think I just want to reiterate that it's really okay. This whole thing is about healing. That's what this whole process is. The addict's going to be going through their own, hopefully if they're successful and engaged, they're going to go through their own healing story. And no matter what happens, nobody's going to take away from that, right? So, don't allow people to rob you of your opportunity to heal. And so there's nothing that says that you have to kind of parallel what you said at the beginning, that you have to sit in a massive sense of unhealth with somebody who does not care enough for you to provide you the safety to keep moving towards health. I mean, that's not the definition of marriage. It really isn't. So
every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we'll see you next week. Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.